I had hardware in my foot, and I never set it up. It's been a mellow day, and I was so glad we didn't have to come here at 2. I was like, oh, this is good. And as long as we don't say too much, we can maybe have a decent sized meeting.
Yeah, no extra babbling.
Yeah, no extra babbling. Say what needs to be said.
How long was the surgery? I don't even know. I wasn't asleep. Oh, yeah. It was here in town?
What?
Yeah, well, they almost sent me to Grand Junction, but.
Dr. Gwen?
I don't know how long it took.
What?
I don't know how long the surgery was.
Did you get a nice little ambulance ride and stuff, or?
Yeah.
Were they just sitting in the back pickup?
No, they had to carry me out. It took like 3 hours to get me out. Ooh.
That was no fun.
No, I've ridden an ambulance before.
Well, the ambulance was fine compared to the cart that they.
UTV that they threw you on?
No, they just carried. They had like a.
Oh, yes.
Like a deer cart?
Stretcher with a.
I'm trying to remember if I put it in my
wheel.
purse or in my satchel.
Single wheel.
I think I put
Have
it
you
in my
ever seen those deer carts?
I don't know. At least I didn't
Point to grab.
Yeah. That's when you wish you had that helicopter insurance or
I better buy that.
yeah.
Out what's the CFI? River. How much the river run?
It's at 40, a little over 40.
It went up to 40.
They said the
Yeah.
projected is by the 14th it'll be up to 72,000. Is the projected.
The other compliments?
Oh, the confluence,
The all-time high was 81.
that was 110.
So Colorado has 461% of normal.
I think the bike path is going to, today when I was going down the bike path on my bike, the creek, Mill Creek is right on the edge
Oh,
of
okay.
and that happened like overnight. It's like I rode it yesterday, and
Spill. You can
and the water was.
standing this? For only so long though, so you better hurry it up.
Ah, there we go.
No babbling.
But yeah, pretty
So are you
wild.
two racing or what?
No.
Trying to get in front of each other?
So it's already 40.
Yeah, really. We'll blame Evan.
Is that ginger?
Mango.
Hey, Curtis.
Stay away from double black. I stay away from double black myself.
My crush was using
You did?
I have crossed
I
where?
messed up right there. Once you flew.
mine. It wasn't a bad crash. I've crashed way worse than that.
Really?
Not a scratch.
It wasn't a bad crash.
It's just how I land.
Wow.
I love driving.
So there's,
You gotta I mean, it's kind of funny. It's like if you land wrong.
Yeah.
but to break,
Well, I mean,
you guys ran really bad.
but I
I love
halfway
it.
with crashes and I
When I was
kind
in
of got
Hawaii,
out
when
without
I was
even
in
a
the candy
scratch.
store and we made it. So
Where were you?
I went back 3 times to
In
get
what
it.
part?
Just one of the rookies coming down off the. I think I did probably. I came off at the top of the road.
I heard you broke your hip.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it.
Well, that's because I went pants
the
on.
financial officer on this one.
Well, as the chair of
It's
the
all
county
black.
council that
Okay.
holds the budget, yeah, she asked me to sign. I'm like, no
I
way,
was just
Jose.
making sure I signed the right place.
Make it secret
I'm
in here.
okay. I'm working
I thought I brought my.
I'm from.
Terry,
So,
how are you? Why does this seem like forever since I've seen you?
Yeah, it's been a while.
That drives me crazy. were wrapping up my my phone charger. Well, it's good. It's 61. It's not going to go down. But I don't remember. I obviously didn't. I offered. He wrapped it up and ate it there where I had it and put it into one of my workshop. The W word when you're on the river, you know.
Did you? You know, with the Kubota and what a L uterus. It's the next step up from where I am. So Brian, you just getting the implements with it? I'm gonna get it. Yeah, I got a brush hog and fried in with bigger blade. Sorry, it's been on my mind.
Yeah, first time in a long time.
That's a fun toy if you can. Yeah.
Oh, I like to get the things I can check. I just like that. It's like writing down a list.
Appreciate it. Not right now, maybe later. Yeah, that's all right. Okay, don't do this to me.
Yeah,
You can get it on mine now.
So if you know anybody that's looking for something with a blade and a little. What is it? Kubota. Oh, it's just okay. Yeah, Kubota B unit. I might. So I need to sell my old one. You know what you want for it? Yeah, probably about 3. Okay. I put a lot of money into it. Yeah, except that. It's got a blade. Got a blade, got a loader, 4-wheel drive. It's got buckets. What do you need, a backhoe? Don't like a bucket on the loader? Oh, yeah. Well, you know, the loader's a back.
I like
down
nice
ready here?
pens. I always use my nice pens. The pens I really enjoy and I just like it, but
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
I would like to call to order this meeting of the Grand County Municipal Building Authority, this special meeting on today, Tuesday, June 4th, 2019 at 4:02. Those present are Greg Halliday, Jalen Hawks, Mary McGann, Curtis Wells, Terry Morse, Rory Paxman, Evan Clapper, Ruth Dillon, Chris Baird. And first item of business is approval of minutes. We have some minutes from May 21st on the dais. Any comments on these minutes?
Sorry, we are in the MBA meeting.
Yes,
right?
MBA.
I pulled up the wrong.
Pull up the right agenda.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep, the May 21st minutes are on the dais.
They are?
Move to approve those minutes.
I thought they were in the packet too.
They may have been as well.
I revised them, and so the ones on the dais are probably the ones you want to approve,
Okay.
not the ones in the packet.
Now, are they hooked with the regular?
What's that?
And why can't I find them?
Do you want to highlight those revisions from the May 21st?
I think it's mostly just formatting.
Okay,
I added the attest and approve signatory lines.
gotcha.
I don't think I really changed much except for just clarified some stuff. Clarified that you opened the public hearing, that there were no public comments.
So,
Just Just little things clarifying, because these have to be sent to the CIB, and so they need to have certain.
Here it is.
So motion made by Curtis Well to approve the minutes on the dais. Seconded by Greg Halliday. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
They should, because there isn't any.
Motion passes 6-1 with one abstention.
So
So,
Rory
I do have a
Paxman
question,
abstained.
sorry.
Yes.
On the agenda, the minutes listed to be approved are December 18th and May 21st. So shall I make a motion to
Please.
postpone the minutes of December 18th, 2018? I
So
make
we
that
don't have
motion.
those? I thought I drafted those. I thought those were already approved, in fact, but maybe not.
I mean, they're on the agenda. I didn't see any to review, so.
Well, I don't know. I'll have to find them. I thought I already drafted those, but maybe not. Didn't we get those approved already?
Let's look on the
We'd have to-
last agenda then.
All right, I guess we'll deal with it next time. I thought that we already approved those.
So should we?
And we may have approved them last meeting because they weren't on the last meetings, so maybe we haven't approved them. They're listed to be approved on May 21st meeting, but they aren't in that meeting, so.
So motion to postpone made by Jalen Hawks,
Second.
seconded by Mary McGann. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. No presentation scheduled for today. No discussion items scheduled today. Our action items are item C, ratifying the president's signature on an application for a grant and/or possible loan by the Community Impact Fund Board in the amount of $175,000 to fund part of the local match portion of the Federal Aviation Administration grant to rebuild the parallel taxiway and improve the commercial apron at Canyonlands Field Airport. This was from our last hearing, and I don't believe we received any additional comments on that, and so it would just be ratifying that signature. Jalen.
I move to ratify the president's signature on an application for a grant and/or possible loan by the Community Impact Fund Board, CIB, in the amount of $175,000 to fund part of the local match portion of the Federal Aviation Administration grant to rebuild the parallel taxiway and improve the commercial apron at Canyonlands Field Airport.
Second.
Motion made by Jalen Hawks, seconded by Mary McGann. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, item D, ratifying the president's signature on the CIB application for the new EMS bays facility for a totaling amount of $3,025,000.
I move to accept the ratifying the president's signature on an application for a grant and loan to the Community Impact Fund Board, CIB, totaling amount of $3,025,000 for a new emergency medical service facility for Ambulance Bay, and authorize the chair to sign all association documents.
Motion made by Mary McGann, seconded by Rory Paxman. Any further discussion? Jalen?
I mean, I don't know, but my understanding was, and maybe I'm wrong, but wasn't that grant/loan for, is the remodel of the current facility part of that $3 million? And if so, that little word for, F-O-R, should be changed to and?
It's not, it's just a metal building.
Just the metal building, okay. Which also includes sleeping quarters though, so.
Log.
Okay. No more discussion.
Any
from
further
me.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. No public hearing items for today. Any future considerations? Any necessity for a closed session? That brings us to the end of our agenda, and I would adjourn this meeting at 4:09. Do we need to switch any recordings or anything? All right. The time is now 4:09, and I would like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Grand County Council. Those in attendance are Greg Halliday, Jay Lynn Hawks, Mary McGann, Curtis Wells, Terry Morse, Rory Paxman, Evan Clapper, Ruth Dillon, and Chris Baird. Mr. Whitney, would you do us the honor of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then next up is approval of minutes. We have item A, B, and F on the dais here.
And those were the ones that were in your email too, right?
So I think the only ones that are actually ready are the March 20 and April 2nd. I did do an initial draft for May 21 from Tara Collins' notes, but I think I need more time to rework that. So A and B probably ready for approval if you are ready, and the rest need to be postponed.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the March 20th, 2019 Joint City Council Special Meeting and Representative John Curtis's Town Hall, and April 2nd, 2019 County Council Meeting.
Motion made by Mary McGann, seconded by Terry Morse. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Please.
On the April 2nd minutes page, probably the last page because it's a public hearing. Yeah, page 3 of 5, and just that one PDF is, where did it go? It is under citizens to be heard for the, yeah, just citizens to be heard. It lists Joel Holyoke as making a comment, and it's actually Joe K. It's my understanding.
What was the last name?
Joe K. Holyoke.
Oh, different.
And I would just put middle initial K because I don't know if that really stands for anything. That's it.
Any further discussion? Motion's on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. I would entertain a motion to postpone items C, D, E, and F.
So moved.
Motion made by Curtis Wells, seconded by Rory Paxman. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, ratification of payment of bills. They're getting faster.
All right. Yeah, the Grant County bills to be approved for 6/4/2019. Total bills $920,473.11. Total payroll $247,750.18. Total bills and payroll $1,168,223.29.
Motion made by Rory Paxman, seconded by Terry Morse. I will call for a roll call vote. Greg Halliday.
Aye.
Jay Lynn Hawks.
Yes.
Mary McGann.
Yes.
Curtis Wells.
Aye.
Terry Morse.
Yes.
Rory Paxman.
Yes.
Evan Clapper. Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, General Council reports and future considerations. Greg, you want to start us off?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Last Friday, the 31st, there was 3 of us. We met with representatives from Senator Romney office. There was Clay Cozier and
Kelsey Berg.
What's her name?
Kelsey Berg.
Yeah,
Kelsey.
okay. And it was a good discussion. I'll let Councilman McGann elaborate further on it. During the discussion, the Ida Gulch situation came up. Briefed them about it and gave them some additional paperwork on it. And they said that they would look into it and contact Congressman Curtis's office, because he's the one that we originally talked to about it, and that they would get with him. The next day, I got a call from Larry Ellertson, Congressman Curtis's representative for this area. We talked again about the Ida Gulch situation, and it is still an active issue. You look like you have a question, Maury. The Ida Gulch is a sand and gravel pit out on State Road 128, and the federal government has denied anyone access to that unless they're working on a federal road project. The problem is that the county and specifically the town of Casa Valley really need access in that, and Casa Valley has really no other option. So that both Senator Romney's office and Congressman Curtis's office are now working to try to get us some way to have access to that pit. Also, we talked about the TRT from the BLM campsites and the Forest Service campsites, and if the TRT didn't work, perhaps an impact fee would work there. And then I've been working an issue that was brought up from the town of Casa Valley. I don't know how many people were aware of this. We had a couple people land stall aircraft on the top of Perriott Mesa out there, and one was able to take off, the other was not. It's got all the people of Casa Valley upset about it, but I witnessed them lifting the aircraft off of the top of the mesa, followed them into town. I contacted the BLM about it. The BLM is pursuing action against them. To land or take off from BLM property, you have to have a permit, and they did not have a permit. So that is being pursued, and that's all I've got.
Thanks for that. Jalen?
I attended the Four Corners Mental Health Board meeting. They are pretty much ready to go on their new Moab building that's behind Wendy's, but there are some drainage issues they're working through first. They have partnered for the last year and a half with a nonprofit partner to provide medically assisted treatment for opioid abuse and overdoses, and they are breaking out on their own now. They will be providing that without the assistance of the nonprofit, so they've worked out all the bugs, and hopefully they say they're going to expand down into this area. I know that opioids is not our biggest drug use issue, but it would be helpful to have that here as well. They've also been approached by a couple of nonprofits, and USARA is one of them, that is hoping to have office space in their building that's across the way, that way from us. And so they're probably, rather than selling that Four Corners building, they're going to lease it out long-term to people, and if that doesn't work out and if they need the money, they'll sell it. I went to the Public Health Board meeting as well. They brought up, I guess all of the health officers are banding together and figuring out what to do about House Bill 163, which I was kind of hoping Christina might be here. It's a use of public goods for personal gain bill, and there are a lot of problems with it, so my understanding is it's going to be worked through again. But meanwhile, if a county doesn't have good, strong policies regarding what employees may and may not do with public property, they could be in for felony prosecution. So it sounded pretty serious, and I was just going to ask if we had policy in our employee handbook that outlines what they can do. I mean, for instance, just something innocent like accidentally taking a pen home, you know, really silly stuff like that. As well as some more serious stuff. And they're also working on the medical cannabis proposal. There are 4 regions, the states to be divided up into 4 regions as far as pharmacy licenses go, and then within each of those regions they'll also have distribution centers. It's not clear at this point who the distributor will be. Our health department, Moab, and in Price, they don't really have room to add another employee to be a distributor. They are looking at other options like perhaps workforce services, so that's still all up in the air. And I believe I tried to attend AOG by phone, but they didn't provide that option, so I did not attend AOG. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mary?
Yes, I've been pretty quiet this last couple of weeks. I did attend the regional transportation meeting where they talked about the rail study. It's a moving target, lots of things to be worked out and logistics to look at, but I'm really excited about the study going forward and look forward to what the outcome is. On the 30th, I went to the Resiliency Hub meeting. There were not many people in attendance, but there were many good ideas on how to repurpose recycling so that we don't have to take it outside the county, and we can use it here. And then Greg talked about the meeting we had with Kelsey Berg and Clay Crozer from the Senator Romney's office. I felt like they were very receptive. You know, to have impact fees rather than transient room tax might be the way to go, because then all that money could be used for impact rather than dividing it up between promotion and impact. So we're looking at it in 2 ways. So that's exciting. And then we just discussed the problems of tourism and, you know, the impacts it's having, you know, the good and the bad. So that's all.
Thanks for that. Curtis?
The first thing I want to report on is a meeting from the 22nd with Jeff Sanders, or Flanders. He's the new planner with UDOT. Sanders. Simpsons fan. I'm thinking of Jeff Flanders from The Simpsons. And that was a scope of work meeting for the UDOT regional transportation planning process. So there was a meeting held earlier this year over at the city council chambers that was a really big meeting. There was, I don't know, 30 to 40 some people probably. And the focus of that meeting was to discuss the concept of doing a regional transportation plan. And so this meeting that was held here in these chambers, that was, I think, put together by our staff, was just to refine the scope of work or begin to give feedback to UDOT on that. And so essentially what's being proposed is a 9 to 12 month study that will cost approximately $300,000, and this will be contributed to by SITLA, UDOT, Grand County, San Juan County, and City of Moab, maybe more, maybe Arches National Park, to do a comprehensive regional transportation plan. And the City of Moab doesn't have a transportation plan currently. We do, and so the idea would be to through this study and this work, update our transportation plans. So it's something that's still in the works. The costs for Grand County to contribute what was discussed between $60,000 and $75,000, but Bill Jackson, our roads department, and planning and zoning already have that line item approved in the 2019 budget, so eyeing that. So that was a really good meeting. Attended the board member training on the 23rd. Good pizza, good information, and continuing to work on the arches issue. Today attended a meeting of with various members of that make up the motorized trails and recreation community, and some members at Trail Mix attended this meeting. And it's an exploratory committee that's looking for a structure similar to Trail Mix, but for motorized recreation. It was a productive meeting. They continue to plan. They're going to plan to get together and kind of hammer out what they want their committee to look like and what exactly their goals are, and what support from the county they would want. So I'll continue to follow that, and that's what I have to report on.
Thanks for that. Terry?
Went to the Planning Commission meeting, and the...
Mike.
Oh, Mike. As in...
Who's Mike?
Michael?
Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Mike, who's Mike? Okay, can you hear me now? So I attended the Planning and Planning Commission meeting, and the first item on the agenda was the Viewgate Terrace High-Density Overlay application. That's for those of us that don't know, it's a parcel of land behind the Wyndham, which is now in process of being built. There were some issues with the water, as we all know. The springs behind the current structure need to be dealt with and are being dealt with. And there was conversation about the application needing or the applicant needing to come to resolution on that. Then the other thing is that the applicant came to the Planning Commission without actually having a preliminary plat, which is the usual form that kind of an application would take. And he was seeking information about whether or not the high-density overlay worked with that parcel, and so on and so forth, trying to get a reading on it. The road width, easements, storm drains, all were recommend or were items that staff recommend that they be handled prior to the actual application, and the owner and staff has actually worked out a lot of that. And they were a little bit, Grand Water is a little bit concerned about the water pressure on the upper part of the development. There was a motion to approve subject to all the staff recommendations being made. Then there was also discussion about the where we're headed on the moratorium subject, and our county attorney weighed in on the difference between between non-conforming use and overlay zones being put on specific parcels, and so on and so forth. A certain amount of time was spent discussing the subject of campgrounds. I think the Planning Commission had more clarity on all the rest of the overnight rental inventory, but campgrounds seem to be still a question whether they should be handled by non-conforming uses, overlay, or just how to handle them. And I think that since that meeting has concluded, there's probably been a little bit more clarity for them on that. One of our local realtors was at that meeting, and she was very adamant that non-conforming uses on nightly rentals that are already existing create a severe lending problem for the future, any future owners. So she is entreating upon us that are involved in the process to make sure that we use overlays instead of non-conforming uses. And that was about the crux of that meeting. And then yes.
May I ask a question?
May. Mm-hmm.
So did our county attorney weigh in on that issue, non-conforming? I mean,
yes,
and
she did.
Because my understanding when we talked with the state property rights ombudsman was that the non-conforming use goes with the land, and so when it's sold, if you sell it as a land that has non-conforming use of a B&B on it, for instance, it stays with the land. So I'd be interested to hear what she said about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think that she will also address us with that concern too. But to my understanding, having a property that is being sold with a non-conforming use zoning creates problems for lenders and anybody trying to sell that property to someone that wants a commercial loan, a regular on-market loan, will have significant problems getting a loan with that designation. So, it creates shall we say, a real opportunity for legal problems. So I think that is the crux of it, but our county attorney can certainly advise us better on that. I also went to the mosquito abatement district meeting last night, which was postponed until tomorrow night. And that is my full report.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
All right, well, we've got airport board. A couple things that were there. SkyWest hasn't turned in their total employments yet, but with the other companies that we have out there, the total employments was 1940, so it's still pretty good. Them there will be pretty high. I'm guessing we'll be up in the 2000s somewhere, but employments. Our parking fees for the month of June. Yeah. So, and then the month of June, we got about a little over $2,500 in parking. And then
Month of May or
June. May, because we're not in June. You're right. Man, where am I? Thank you. The other one was in May too. Sorry. And then I guess you guys got the email. I don't know if you guys have heard the award for the FAA supplement grant for the $4 million. We got that for the $4,750,000 for the rebuild on the taxiway. The painting on the heart stand project was finally completed. It took them 4 days to complete that work, but they finally got it completed. And the other thing we have is we are adding on our Wi-Fi. When you go into the free Wi-Fi out there, you have to fill out a few questionnaires before you can join in, and it's just got some questionnaires like, are you traveling for pleasure or for business? And so we're kind of keeping an eye on that to see what everybody's traveling for. And then also you have to put in your zip code so we know where you're, something like that. So, and then also we had a safety. We had one emergency landing. Twin engine King Air, the flap broke, which is a pretty major deal. Without that, it's kind of hard to fly. But I guess Judd watched it on the cameras, and it landed like it wasn't even hurt, so that was good. It's still out there and it's getting fixed. And then we had a concern about skydivers over the airport, and that's been addressed, but it was mostly just they were worried about things falling from the sky and hitting the airport, like loose shoes. And so we've talked with the skydive companies about making sure people's shoes are tight and that their altimeter is tied to their wrist good and that kind of stuff. So things that could fall. So that's all I have.
Thanks for that. The end of the month is always pretty quiet for me, so I don't have much to report on from the end of May. And I came in today, I got a letter from Sonny Perdue for the USDA acknowledging our letter that we sent regarding the state's petition on the roadless rule. So there's that. And also, last week I met with Representative Congressman Curtis as part of his clean air tour. So I met him at the end of his bike ride. He pedaled from Green River down to town. And so we had a little bike hurrah over at City Hall. And it was a nice meeting, and he was here to kind of listen to environmental concerns or wishes that we have in his district. And so there's not as much buzz in Washington about clean air as there is in Utah. And so he was just kind of, getting tabs on that. But like I said, it was a good meeting. It was very refreshing to kind of, focus on things that we were, to kind of focus on our similarities rather than the differences between everyone at the meeting. And it was outdoors under the trees, so very well put on by the city. And I was glad to be invited to that. And he's looking at coming back in October. And so we can, if there's specific things that we'd like to talk with him then, we can kind of keep the conversation going. But that is all that I had to report on since the end of May. Elected official reports. I don't see any elected officials. Council administrator report.
Been working toward developing an agenda with San Juan County Commission for the joint meeting coming up with the County Council, which might be the first in forever, I don't know, maybe first ever, joint meeting of those two bodies. That would be Monday, June 10th at the Arena Pavilion, Old Spanish Trail Arena Pavilion. Looks like there's a wish list to talk about, obviously growth in the valley and working together and what kinds of things we already have in place, but also TRT and some SITLA kinds of topics. So 10 o'clock on Monday, June 10th. The other thing that's been taking some time has been supporting the study committee with their open houses. Their first one is tomorrow. And so I've been charged with putting together the displays for it, and that involves some research and some hours, but in any case, it should be good. So the first one's tomorrow, 4 to 7, open house at the Grand Center to come. And actually the main thing they need is surveys, a very brief 4-question survey filled out by registered voters so that they can get some kind of direction on what to recommend. And so it's intended to be informal and informative. The next one will be next Thursday, June 13th at Grand Water, and the last one scheduled is Monday, June 17th at Castle Valley Town Building. So please help us get the word out to get participants there. It's important. And that's all I've got.
Thanks for that. And I do want to apologize, Chris. I was looking at the audience and I completely... Did you have anything for the elected officials reports? Okay. So
Nothing new at all.
Yes, welcome back. Thank you. I appreciate you working during your recovery for sure. Next up, department reports. We have the 2018 building department report from Mr. Jeff Whitney.
And tools.
Whoa, stepping it up.
High tech.
What I want to start with is kind of a let's see. There we go. Just a slide that kind of gives you an idea of our valuations, mainly for that's what I wanted to do. Which screen. I want to go back on the slide though. There we go. So, this slide basically is just so you kind of get an idea of the taxable property that came online this year. I also included San Juan County. Because you kind of need to get an idea of stuff that keeps coming online from down there. Not so high tech, huh? Oh,
Matt, can you just be his Vanna? Can you just
Yeah,
Vanna
really.
White up there and touch the screen? Or
Get
do
it back
that?
up here. Okay,
Teamwork makes the dream work.
so, what I wanted you to know was the county's residential construction still outpaces its commercial construction by a long shot. However, this reflects about $8,500,000 worth of taxable property from one project, that's the Wyndham Hotel. Also, we had 3 condominium projects from the Sage Creek project, which were about $3 million worth apiece. So, kind of interesting. There's a little blip in Castle Valley of commercial, that's utilities. Castle Valley doesn't really allow commercial. But this will come into play on a later slide to give you some ideas, so you need to kind of understand the situation. Okay, construction valuations. This is a comparison of 2017 and 2018. There's a $20 million difference in the construction that went on this year as opposed to last year. This includes the city, so you can get an idea of trends. The city, actually, the county outpaces the city in even commercial construction, which is a little bit strange. You would think it would be otherwise, but the trend is towards commercial construction in the county. As you see the comparisons between last year and this year, residential construction stays pretty much the same, but commercial construction has really gotten to be a higher value. But the 2017 construction is 17% higher than the volume of construction in 2018. Go ahead. Now, this is first quarters. First quarter of 18, first quarter of 19 are within $200,000 of each other. So our trends are the same, but if you'll notice the difference in residential construction, this is pushed by condominium projects. It's not pushed by single-family homes. And there's no way for us to say that the condominium projects, although they can be rented out by the night, because these ones were vetted before the moratorium, the big increase, there's no way for us to call that commercial construction because they are primarily a residence. They will be a residence for the most part, but they are in that overlay that can be rented out by the night. But pretty much on par with 2017. Let's see. Anyway, 86% of our construction in the county for the first quarter of this year was residential construction. Now, future construction, we have 5 more of those $3 million complexes at Sage Creek that are supposedly going to come online this year, as far as being issued permits. The total valuation of that, then, again, almost $3 million per each. The Scenic View Hotel, which is the one out at Dow Flats, that has 82 units. It's already vetted under before the moratorium, and it has a valuation of about $6 million. Oh, permit, I'm sorry. Okay, no, this is the funny thing. This is only county fees collected. The permit fees that the county collected in 2017, remember the difference between the construction volumes and of 2017 as opposed to 2018. The county did more. This only reflects the fees collected by the county. There again, the city paid 50% of our 2017 budget and will pay a portion of our 2018 budget. They also reflect San Juan County and Castle Valley. They're part of our budget system. Impact fees collected in 2018 were $162,470 for the year. First quarter was $4,714. However, the first quarter of 2019 we collected $19,786. And the reason for that is commercial construction gave a different rate of impact fees. We collect a great deal for impervious area for drainage and circulation, depending on the type of use. If it's a warehouse, you're not getting much circulation, but if it's a motel, you're getting a great deal of circulation. So they pay based on the amount of circulation or the amount of traffic. Basically, that's construction. I want to talk a little bit about floodplain, but if you have any questions about construction trends or
Questions? Well done.
okay, floodplain. We have the map that wasn't included in our FEMA WOMA change. We had from the Mill Creek Bridge, or from the Pat Creek Bridge on Mill Creek, we had that map from that to the county line. We applied for a LOMA to get new mapping all the way down. However, FEMA would not redo a map that didn't exist, so they redid the map to the point where they quit the old maps, and then they were going to charge us again to map the rest. And we cried a little bit, and they agreed to do it for free. But that requires a bunch of public hearing type situation that goes on. The map is proposed. There's a lot of property owners that are affected by the map. And so we just completed on the 15th of May the appeal period for the new mapping. We had that shown on our county website. We had it advertised in the papers. There was a 90-day wait period. We had heard there were going to be some challenges to it, but there weren't. So I spoke to the people from Region 8 FEMA out of Denver this week. We will be getting in September a letter of final determination. Then it has to go through notifications to Congress and everything. There's a change in the federal map. We will have an official map that is accepted and adopted in May of 2020. However, we are still obligated under FEMA guidelines to regulate that area to the newest, best information we have. We know that map's not going to change, and we have been, since we got the maps, requiring people to build to that standard within that area because we don't want the map to be adopted and then to not be in compliance. And that would force those people to pay a higher insurance rate. So we will be coming to you within the next couple of months to readjust our floodplain ordinance. So be ready to see that. We're going to change we're going to put a freeboard requirement of 1 foot because the building code already requires that foot, but it's not in our ordinance. So we force that under the building code, which is state law applied. But if it's in our ordinance, it's better for us to deal with it. Any questions about floodplain?
Looks like we're going to have a flood.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for that. Agency reports, not seeing any. Citizens to be heard. This is the portion of the meeting for citizens who would like to speak on a topic that is not on the agenda. If you do want to speak on an agenda item, there's these cards to fill out if you put your name and which topic, which agenda letter or number you are interested in speaking on. Were there any citizens to be heard for an item not on the agenda? Please come forward and state your name.
Greetings. Lovely, we're all here fresh. My name is Mark Horowitz. I live at 1275 Boulder. I've been there 21 years. I would like to reiterate my observation, my request that you develop and include a more effective procedure for notification in the HDH zone. It's my impression, I believe, that every time an HDH project is developed, people will be shocked to see it happen. And I know for myself, it requires a great deal of diligence to kind of know what's happening. You have to download the package, because you're here, you do it, you're professionals. Everybody else who wants to know what's going on has to download the whole package and study the whole situation, you know what I'm saying? So take, for example, I'm not specifically, I'm just taking, for example, the public hearing notice notifications that occurred in my neighborhood this week. Here's the photograph that you see in your package this evening of the placard which was placed in my neighborhood. Here's my photograph of that very same sign. That's been at least 10 days in the weeds. Okay, that sign is posted some 500 feet from the specific parcel. Also, the sign says public notice occurring on this property, and there's no indication of what property that is. You'd have to assume it's the property that it's on. To me, it seems like it should have a parcel number. It should have a diagram so people can get it. When they turn into the May Estates, they go, oh, that's behind my house. That's going to make a big difference for people. So I'm asking you, please, to consider developing a more effective process for public notification in the HDH, whatever it's called, the process. You know what I'm saying? And without discounting that comment at all, I'd like to make another comment. We are now almost exactly 1 year from a terrible fire tragedy that occurred in this valley. And the effect of that, the awareness of the fire that happened that destroyed 10 homes, last 4th of July, after the fireworks occurred, it was like Christmas Eve. I use Christmas as an example because the gift to me is no fireworks, no high flyers in my neighborhood. I say it's time the weeds are high this year. The rain is big, the weeds are especially high. My place and the property adjacent to my place is choked with flammable materials. So I'm asking the council to do up the level of awareness in our county during this next 30 days as the 4th of July comes, so that people can love and respect the county's fireworks show and let the rest of it slide. I'll say I would like to see some place like the, gosh, I'm not good at, way south of town, there's the horse arena, the arena. There's a place for everybody to bring their high flyers and enjoy them all together where it's safe. You know? A fire truck is there. Picnic, everything. But not in my neighborhood where they're illegal and for every year for 20 years, you know. And again, the property next to me is choked with weeds. I have the 13 of the largest trees in this county on my property. I don't care about my house, but I care about my trees. So I'm asking you to help in some way to up the level of awareness as we approach the 4th of July. Thank you. And welcome back, Chris.
Thank you.
Good luck to us all.
Thanks. Any other citizens to be heard for an item not on the agenda? Moving on, we have presentations. We have a presentation on the 911 system upgrade. Matt Sinceros.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to use this too.
Do you know how?
I have no idea. Completely lost on this thing.
We get Jeff back in here.
Yeah, I'll let him drive. I'm going to try to go over this without getting too far out into the weeds on it. Our 911 system has been here for a while. One of the first systems that was installed after I got here. The system of that type and nature with server bases and that kind of stuff should be typically refreshed or replaced every 5 to 6 years or so. Right now we're in year 8 and ongoing. The support contract and things that are on our system, and we've been to you guys on this a few different times, is well past due. The system urgently needs to be replaced. We've been working on getting that system replaced for at least the last couple of years now, working back and forth with UCA, so Utah Communications Authority, who's responsible for emergency communications across the state, from the inception of the call, 911 call, all the way through radio communications back to your first responders and back, and the funding that goes along with that. Through the last couple of years, we've been through a number of different designs on trying to get the system upgraded. In upgrading our system too, there's some network changes that need to happen. Here in southeast Utah, we've been kind of a bit of an anomaly in the state for 911 because our 911 system, we are paired right now with San Juan County. We have redundant systems back and forth with each other, so if the call doesn't get answered here in a timely manner, then we'll San Juan and same for them back to us as well. And so we're redundant in that case, which is cool, but as far as obtaining the actual mapping and data that comes into the call, we are a little siloed down here. We are not currently connected to a centralized system like the rest of the state is. Connected to that system is called an EZNet. It's an emergency services network. The UCA has passed legislation that requires PSAPs. PSAPs are the Public Safety Answering Point, which we operate here at the Sheriff's County. The Sheriff's Office does. That EZNet enables next generation 911 services, text to 911, provides better mapping services, more resiliency to networks, a whole bunch of stuff. So the short of that here is that in order to be able to get that network down here, we have to have redundant paths in and out of here built with fiber optics. That's one of the reasons that we've kind of been a lone duck out here, so to speak, is that we haven't had traditionally a backbone that stretches back up into the Wasatch Front or even into Price. So part of this upgrade is making sure that that network is set up appropriately and that we do have separate paths in and out of here. So with this system, now, it will actually be coming in from the north through 191 and then going south all the way down past Blanding and up around the Henry Mountains and then back into the top there. So it builds in a much needed level of redundancy that doesn't exist right now. So right now we're just kind of here. We've been making it happen and it's great, but it really needs to get changed. So what I'm showing you here, this is what they call a geodiverse system. And right now we're a geodiverse system with San Juan County, as in that we work back and forth with each other. But in our current design, which is not this, we're just two little guys and we've got redundant paths back to each other. What this initial design is here is where we would have been one host here, and Carbon County would have been another host, and then Emory County and San Juan County would be remotes off of those. And you can see all these redundant paths and lines and things happening here. This is what we were initially looking at, and this is a very expensive option. This one would have ran us about $165,000 up front, and the network costs on it, they're crazy. And the reason I'm showing you this one is that just to kind of give you an idea of the struggles that we've been working with on this. And through all of this with UCA, they've been tasked with different legislation. Their funding models have changed. And initially when we were talking about this, we're pleading with them, like, you guys have paid for this, or, there's Homeland Security money and other stuff that came in when we bought the system back in 2011. And we're faced up against, replacing this cost in order to be compliant with them, but then they weren't willing to fork out any money to be able to assist us in order to be able to get that replacement done. So Rick Bailey's been very instrumental with that, and going back and forth and dealing with UCA. And initially they had suggested to do a reimbursement of 90%. And that was after quite a bit of pleading and demonstrating to them that, we host 3 million people a year. I mean, our level of public safety activity, search and rescue operations is very high across the state, or compared to the rest of the state. And we're down here struggling just to keep our 2 centers going and not getting any assistance back. So they were very receptive to that, and they initially offered some reimbursement funds. But then they came back and they said, well, hang on, if you can keep your system going, we're putting out a new RFP across the state that would effectively replace all of the 911 consoles across the state, and have all of those centrally connected to a couple of large data centers. They went through that RFP process, and we've kind of put the brakes on some things. And so just recently, they decided that they're going to pull back the RFP.
Oh, no.
We're not going to go through this. And again, that's due in part with some change in legislation, some of the designs and things they got back, a list of reasons that they can come up with. Now, the silver lining to that is that this whole big complex system that everybody thought was grand and otherwise doesn't happen, which is kind of okay. Because if we don't do this one, then what we're going to do is this one. If we notice out of this, a whole lot less lines. It's a little more simple, right? And that's for 2 reasons. We'll see down here that there's actually this one spot here represents 7 other PSAPs. What effectively we're doing is that we're going to move, instead of hosting all of our equipment and buying all that equipment, hosting it here, hosting it in Emory County, and building all these new cross connects, and then backhaul back into the state to get to that ESINet. What this does is that we leverage existing data centers that are in Davis County. Davis County, it's a regional multi-node geodiverse system that is, it's pretty big. It's actually designed to house about a third of the state. And right now they have on them, well, ultimately, we'll have us, Amber County, San Juan County. So it really gets our three counties here in this edge of the state up to date, which is a great thing. It also hosts Box Elder County, Wasatch, Summit County, Uinta, and Clearfield as well. And those are just the remote ones. That doesn't count all the stuff that Davis County is running, as well as Lake City and otherwise. And again, it's more simple this way in regards of technicality, but it also reduces our costs as well. Because instead of having to build all these different redundant paths just to be able to answer calls, plus build ESInet in here, all that we're having to do is build in the call routes. The ESInet is all terminated in Davis County. For us, it's it's kind of a double-edged thing as far as resiliency and support. One of the big problems that we have with our 911 system here is that it was sold with a bill of goods that we're going to have dedicated support team and trained staff, otherwise to be able to take care of the system. But we've been continually put in positions where we're having to bring in outside specialists, days and weeks at a time, where we be able to get replacement parts and other stuff. Whereas here, the mainline equipment is all right there in Davis County. If there's something that goes down, CenturyLink is our vendor with all of this. They're right there. They have on-site staff. They have a much better support team. So potentially looking at a minimum 4-hour support call. In this case, it can get handled probably before we even know that there's an issue. So the reason I go into all of this stuff is that this does represent a pretty significant savings to us. Initially, like I said, we were faced with having to pay for it, and they agreed and said, yeah, we'll pay for 90% of it. Now with the new legislation that they've had, I've had verbal confirmations from them that they will pay for 100% of it now. So the reason I'm here today to show you all of this is that tomorrow I'm going to go up to UCA to prep for their UCA meeting, which is on the 12th. And at that, we'll present our setup here in conjunction with San Juan, Amber County, that has all of the network costs, all of the one-time costs, all of that stuff put in there, so that UCA has a number to go off of. To which then I'll come back to you guys and say, look, this is the final number that's there, and hopefully it's a no-brainer at that point that we can just get it going. But I want to give you a little bit of a primer of what's happening. Because it is a rather complex beast. There's lots of moving parts and different players. Ongoing from this, you guys have numbers that are in the packets. There is ongoing network costs, which are a bit more than what we're paying right now. By the time that our next council meeting here, when I come back to you, I'll have a much better handle on where we are with budget in that regard. At the time of budget season last year, there was some unknowns on, well, there's a lot of unknowns with this project in a whole, but a lot of other unknowns on how to make sure that we're appropriating that correctly. So we might have to come back with some sort of amendment with the budget later on. But the short is the system will get replaced well past 2 years. It's actually a really good thing for us. But you'll see in there, there is a quote in there where it talks about, it says the Southeast Geodiverse System on top, and the Grant County one-time fee would be, let's say it's $164,000. And if you look further down in that document, there is the Davis County Geodiverse System with Grand and remotes. And with that one, it actually drops us down by almost $50,000. So it does represent a significant savings to taxpayers across, and So I'd like to think that we're saving some money, we're creating a better system. And just want to, like I said, give you a little bit of background on it, so that when I come to you here next couple of weeks, that you're not looking at me, you have no idea what this is.
Just have one question.
Roy?
So I know it's a bit of a fire hose, but I'd love to answer any questions.
So Matt, I was just curious, does this PSAP, does it connect us better with the highway patrol from the sheriff's department? Do you know if that helps with that?
Yes and no. So PSAPs are across the state. We operate one here that's basically a dispatch center. It's where your 911 call comes in. You got a dispatcher there that's trained to be able to take that 911 call, dispatch out appropriate resources to it. UHP is under the Department of Public Safety, and DPS has dispatch centers and PSAPs across the state as well. For our region, UHP is actually dispatched out of Price. So when a 911 call comes in, assuming that it's in our region, we will either transfer that 911 call to Price or take that information and relay that back and forth to Price. Now, what the system does that makes that better is, like I said, right now, us in San Juan County, we're just kind of two monoliths out here. We're our own guys. When you transfer a call out on the current system, this is kind of older technology too. When you transfer a call out of our system, it actually goes across a normal phone line. It has a priority service, so it still helps. But what happens on the Price's side is that they lose the ability to what's called rebid. When you rebid, it pulls back out your alley Annie information, your address and number information. And so they've got the caller on the line, they can talk to them, but they can't pull any other location.
They can.
So in a lot of cases, if it's a very serious call and it's here, our dispatch team will take it because they can rebid, they can get some of that location information and relay that. What this new system will do, since it's all based on this EZInet, it changes the way that addresses are actually dealt with. So there's a master addressing guide. And I don't want to get out into the weeds on this too bad, but the current addressing guide is kind of based on physical addresses and parcels, where the newer system is actually based on address points. Address points are spatially located to determine where the caller really is. So, for instance, when you get a cell phone call, your current system, assuming that it gets a good enough connection, you can rebid it, should actually provide a GPS coordinate back. With this EZInet system, what it will do is it provides a very, very exact point, almost to a meter around where the person is, so you can get a good signal. So I'm sorry, I kind of got on a tangent.
That's all right. But I just wanted to make sure.
But to answer the end of your question,
Be free to go on.
to answer the end of your question, what this does is that if you do get a call here that is a UHP call, we can then now transfer that system, or transfer that call directly with all the attached caller information, with all the ability to be able to do that rebid and otherwise, to the DPS dispatch center in Price. So yeah, it definitely does increase the ability to be able to do that. Yeah. I'm sorry, not everybody wants to ask.
Jay Lynn.
No questions. I just want to make a comment. Thank you. I'm so grateful for people like you who have minds like yours that can try to help people with minds such as mine, born well before 1990. But I cannot promise that in a couple of weeks when you come back, I won't look like I have no idea what you're talking about.
I get it.
You've done an excellent job, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I appreciate you doing the homework and keeping what's best in mind for us and Rick as well. So thanks to you guys for that. And good luck when you're up there at those meetings. And yeah, those guys kicking down 100%. Would be great.
I did apply to be on the PSAP Advisory Committee, which is
Nice.
a committee that's put together by UCA this year with legislation. Previously, they had regional advisory committees, which I participated on, but we only met once. It was only in existence for about a year. But I did put an application in to hopefully participate on that. It's interesting to me. I know it's kind of a big abstract thing. It's kind of fun, so I hope I get put on too.
We do too.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, that brings us to our general business and action item portion of the meeting. Next up is item I, authorizing submission of a match-required grant application to the State Office of Tourism for Cooperative Marketing Project in 2020. And this is by phone. Are we calling her now, or has she been sitting there for an hour? Sure.
Hello.
Elaine, hello. It's the wonderful county council here. How are you?
Hello?
Can you hear us? Elaine, can you hear us?
Hold on one moment. Let me step out. I'm at a trade show. Let me walk over here. Turn up my volume. Okay. I think I can hear you better.
Great.
What was the question?
Tell us who you are and what you want. Sorry, your agenda item just came up, and for the sake of public record, this is Elaine Gisler, the Moab Area Travel Council Executive Director, on the phone.
Oh, yes, my agenda summary. I'm requesting support for my co-op with the state that I have to submit next week. So my board approved it. It's a $250,000 ask, or $250,000 ask, and the state will up the same ante, $250,000, and it's to support the Chicago area, greater Chicago area, and Austin, Texas. We have been in Southern California for 3 years now. It's very expensive to market in there, and we've done a great job because we can focus on it being a drive time to Moab. And we have decided, because some of the other counties are moving into that same market, that it was time for us to look for areas where our money could be better spent, where we would get people to come and stay longer in our area. So Chicago and Austin are two places we've never done any advertising on, and we have decided that we could really help the airport with employment, because United being a hub in Chicago, Chicago's a hub for United, that would help generate employment. And the same thing with Austin. If people wanted to fly, they could catch United to Denver and then into Moab. So the opportunity is to work with Love to do the same placements of digital, social media, billboards. We would be doing TV, some TV and radio, but it would be much more affordable in those two markets. And then we can have Austin as a drive market as well, because we know a lot of Texans come up to our area. But the goal is to get them to stay longer and to explore areas other than the parks. So that's going to be our focus. So we're looking at $250,000, and the state state will match it, and then it has to go through another committee process at the state. They'll review it and see, what they'll grant and award us. So, and we've been fortunate. I've been fortunate every year in the last 4 years that I've been able to secure grant funding out of the TMPS funds.
Great. Any questions for Elaine? Elaine, thanks for bringing this to us. I think it's a good opportunity for promoting visiting Moab. There's no doubt in my mind it'd be successful at bringing more folks to town. And this grant is just a one-year cycle?
Yes, it's every year. I submit a grant funding that I have to submit it every year this time of the year, and then it will be submitted to the state on June 13th, and then it goes before the committee. I happen to be on that committee, but that doesn't make a difference. So it'll go to the committee in July, and they'll vote on it, and then the allocations for funding will be given out in August. So all of the counties are submitting large requests. You can submit up to 275, but I'm going with the 250. So because we didn't have enough time to round up some, I need a lot of statistics to back up my request, and I've got that a lot along with letters. I've got letters of support from several of the businesses, City Market, from the new Hoodoo Hotel, from Canyonland by night, and I've got letters of support from all of them, and more coming in this week. So I think we have a pretty good chance. No guarantee, but I think we have a pretty good chance of securing some funding.
And
I think the biggest thing is that it's going to help our airport with employment. That is my goal, is to get people to respond to the SkyWest United flights, and if we can keep the employments up and show that we are worthy of other airlines coming in, this is what the focus is all about.
And this grant is just for projects that encourage visitation from outside the state?
Yeah, the projects, the marketing has to really focus on driving visitors into the state of Utah, because it's really attracting people to, come and stay longer. So most all counties will be submitting requests for all different types of funding. So I see possibly that we can expand in some other ways maybe next year. I know that I'm starting the program, just for an example, our new program, marketing program for the local community. But that might be something, once we get it off the ground, that we can go and get some additional funding to do more things to educate, the community. So I see a lot more things happening, because again, that money would apply to people who are outside of Moab or the state, and getting them to come in and visit.
Yeah, I think the Travel Council is doing a good job at trying to educate tourists, and I'd like to see us continue moving in that direction, actually hiring trail ambassadors or promoting film production to diversify the economy more. So
Sure.
I do wonder, about how else that $500,000 could be spent. I think a healthy, stable.
Well, we can also, besides asking for the 2,500 or the $500,000 altogether, because that goes, Love Communications would be placing the buy on that. So our share would be 250. There can be other, as I said, other areas that we can possibly, and maybe for next year we can work on that. Maybe something with luring, people to come and film, working with BIGA to request. I know the museum last year, the Museum of Moab requested funds last year, and they got a small grant. So there are other opportunities for, people and businesses, but it's a matter of just exploring it, and for them to, the businesses to get on board and, do the detail work, and maybe that's something I can help them to work on.
Yeah, I mean, I for one, am the first to say that a healthy, stable tourist economy is really an asset to our community. And, thanks to you and your staff and, many others for protecting that. I do have some concerns, however, about increasing visitor numbers this year for the sake of growth and how that affects our quality of life. And I think we should sit this year out. If we actually see visitation numbers drop, we can always buy in next year. But, if we were to put this question of spending public funds to increase visitation on the ballot for all our citizens to vote on, I think I know what the majority would say. So that's where I'm at. Is there, no, I don't make motions.
Elaine, do you have a response to that?
You know what, it was cutting in and out, so, Ruth, I don't know if you're closer to the, microphone, or if you could repeat that.
Oh, maybe our chair could repeat
Yeah,
that.
I guess my big takeaway was that I like some of the other projects that the Travel Council's doing with promoting responsible tourism, and I'd like to see that $250,000 match spent on things like that. And personally, don't think our citizens would support the co-op would love for billboards and TV ads in Texas and Illinois for this year. And like you said, it's a one-year grant, and if we see, not taking advantage of this opportunity as decreasing our visitor numbers, then we can always opt in next year.
Well, I think at this juncture, because we were looking at reaching out to those two other communities, I probably would not be able to submit the grant for, because I have to start looking at different statistics to provide the committee with to back up my request for education, which we're going to continue to do educational videos and printed materials and moving forward. So you don't have to approve it, and that's your prerogative. I know my board is supporting the effort to the business people who compromise a lot of my board have approved it. The business owners with their letters of recommendation are approving it. But if the county council, and it's not any funds I would be taking out of my budget in addition, it would be, earmarking for funds and the state would match it. So, that's certainly up to you. If you want to take a year off and we see what happens, that's certainly something that we can do.
Elaine, this is Curtis. If we did do that, what would the impacts of that be on the state office of tourism? I mean, they would be expecting.
The state office, I don't think the state has, I think it's about $20 million that they're giving away to all different opportunities and different counties in the state who are going after grant funding. So to them it wouldn't matter. I think the bigger repercussions would be from our business community, where they would feel the fact that our county isn't, going after grant funding that's offered to everybody in Washington County will be presenting, Garfield, all the counties are going to be presenting for grant funding. So I think the business community would probably be the people who would probably be upset or, feel like they're not being supported.
Elaine?
A lot of the smaller entrepreneurs that we have can't afford to run advertising. They might run it in our local newspaper, but they can't afford to, they're relying on us to drive visitation. So, but for me, it's my office, it wouldn't matter. We would just be, doing the things that we're doing. But this just gives us extra support and outside of, our normal program, we would be using the funds that we have. We just wouldn't be getting grant funding.
So Elaine,
The grant funding that we do get actually helps me to pull funds from my budget to support the videos, support the marketing efforts for the new marketing program that we have. So that's where the grant, the extra $250,000 from the state would mean we could spend that, out of the regular budget that I have to support education and all the rest of it.
Elaine, a couple more questions for you. What's the deadline for this process with the state?
I have to submit it next week on June. It has to be submitted June 13th.
From my perspective, Elaine, what I think is unfortunate, and perhaps this is a good opportunity to bring about some awareness in the issue, is we may need some enhance the alignment between the county council and the travel council, because it's unfortunate for us to miss out on $250,000 of grant money on a program that we could all agree on. Personally, I'm not outright opposed to what you're proposing, but I think the council is, has already been expressed some different opinions on it. And so, these are the kinds of things that it's best for us to work out in advance. But I say that in understanding that, have you had the county council not approve one of these grant applications before? Or have you, is there precedent for this you're aware of?
I know the times that there's only been 2 times, I believe, in the past maybe 15 years, I think, that, and I'd have to look on the application, but I think there were twice when Marion was on board that there was not funding. But every year, since I've been in place, I've gotten over $900,000 of funding in the 4 years I've been on board. So, like I said, if you don't feel that the council can back this, that's your decision, and it's okay with me. But I know that the board and my board members believe in it, and the support from the business community believe in it. So, that's the county council's decision.
Well, I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
I move to authorize the submission of the match required grant application to the State Office of Tourism Co-op Marketing Project in the amount of $250,000. $250,000 would then be matched from the Travel Council 220 advertising budget, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Motion made by Rory Paxman,
I'll second that.
seconded by Curtis Wells. Any further discussion? Jaylen?
Yeah, we have a terrifically successful campaign in Southern California. We have a friend who was the news director of a nonprofit small news station. He's now with one of the affiliate network stations, and when he cuts to a commercial, he said there are always Moab, go to Moab advertisements. And I think we've seen that personally in my bed and breakfast. I've seen an increase in the number of people from Southern California. To now go after the Chicago and Austin markets feels before we have a handle on how we're going to take care of the guests and visitors that we already have seems to me to be a little bit premature. So I would concur with your remarks, Chairman Clapper, and probably not be voting for this.
Terry?
I would agree on that, especially in light of the fact that we're right now in the midst of a situation in our community where we have pretty much of an overdose of visitors without being able to supply them, in my mind at least, with a lot of the infrastructure things that a resort would supply a tourist community, not the least of which is restaurants and a lack of traffic and so on and so forth. And so my consideration here would be to vote against this. I also would, in the future, I think it's unfortunate that this wasn't brought before us, a month ago, because then at that point in time we may have been able to take advantage of this grant and put it to use in a way in which it would help the Travel Council leverage themselves forward. And the Travel Council, I think, has done an absolutely phenomenal job. And at the same time, I think that we're being loved to death, and we need to take a year off and settle it down a little bit. So I can't see myself supporting it.
Craig?
Yeah, question that I have is if we push these 2 additional markets, are we going to do less advertising in Southern California or the same?
Elaine, did you want to answer that?
If we don't get the 250,000?
No. If we go forward with the contract, would love, or if we receive the grant and we follow through with the plan to market to or to promote to new markets, would that mean that we would no longer be, or Grand County would no longer be marketing in Southern California and the Seattle area?
No, we're not going to market. So we're pulling all of our spending out of Southern California because the other counties in Utah are going into that market, and it's becoming, it's just becoming too, it's expensive and it's becoming too crowded. So we've been here 3 years. You generally don't want to spend longer than that.
Yeah.
So we're trying to move into markets where it makes sense, where you've got more, people who are bikers and hikers and just maybe a younger demographic of visitors. So that's where we would be focusing. And the other thing, of course, would be to support the airport employment into Canyonlands. But we're not going to be in, those would be our 2 target markets. We do a little bit in Denver. We're going to be doing some in Las Vegas and a little bit in Phoenix. But the bulk of the advertising would be this program. And then we're working on our, social media and education. If you go on our Facebook page, right now you're going to see 5 tips for safety. We have a huge campaign on education and videos. Next week we're shooting accessibility videos with handicapped people out on the river. So, if we don't get the grant funding, it's just something I would have to pull out of our budget. The grant funding would help to offset and be able to let us do more educational videos, more of the support to the new, the Do It Like a Local program that we're going to launch in July, which is all marketed around education and a huge campaign, because that's going to take a lot of effort.
Elaine,
with getting the messaging out, producing a lot of marketing materials, and educating the visitor. We're going to be targeting on educating people who are already coming, who've already made their reservation, but even going further than that, we want to involve local community, people who are in our community that can speak to tips, and we're going to video them. So we have a whole big campaign.
Yeah, I think that
Take advantage of the grant funding, then we would just, work things within our regular budget and see what we could do then.
Yeah, I really like those campaigns that you're referencing, and I would like to see that $250,000 that we would use to match on this grant to promote tourist visitation from outside the state. I'd like to see us spend that locally here on educating these exact programs that you've designed and that your staff have been working on. I'd like to really double down on those. And like you were saying before, the state is still going to spend the $200 million to recruit out-of-state visitors, whether we win the grant or something.
The state has about $22 million, I think, in TMPF funds that's allocated from the state, the governor's office, and that is used for all counties to go after visitation because, visitation for the state of Utah is paramount in driving revenue. And it actually saves every household about $1,375 a year that we would be paying more in taxes. So they're going to use the money. If they don't allocate it to me, they're going to give it to some other county who has a program to drive visitation. So it won't matter. However, what I'm stating is that if we don't take the $250,000 from the state, and then I would have to, out of my budget, come up with the whole $500,000, then that I have to maybe trim that back in order to provide more, more funding for videos and marketing materials. The benefit would be that if we can take the grant funding, then that would mean I could spend more. I could spend $250,000, on marketing and really getting behind the, live like a local, do it like a local, that we're out there promoting. So, either way, I'm flexible. Just, do what I need. I'd have to go back to the board, my board, and then we take a look at the program.
Great. Well, I think for me personally, $250,000 on billboards and TV slots and bus banners and park bench signs in Chicago and Austin, I don't think that's how our citizens want us spending tax dollars. So that's where I'm at. Greg?
Well, I think we'd be spending the majority of it. Well, we would be doing, a lot more on social media. We might do, we haven't mapped out every.
I'm just going off what was presented to us in the packet.
Most of it's going to be, we'd be very selective on how we would, go into those new markets.
Yeah. Greg?
Yeah, so this money is out of her TRT budget now?
Correct.
Okay. The part that I like about this is that the farther away these people have to come, more likely they are to fly and rent a car when they get here, rather than drive their motor home up from Southern California. So in that part, I think it's better. So yeah, I would be inclined at this point to support it.
Okay. Mary?
I think what the people in Moab would like to see is not expanding our market at this point. That we need to deal with the fact we can't get people into town with traffic. There's KUED had a huge program just today on the problems with the diverse camping in this area. So there's so many problems we have to face that to not expand our market this year, I think, is a good idea.
Chris?
So I'm not trying to negate anybody's arguments, but I just want you to be aware that between 2016 and 2017, TRT grew almost 12%, and between 2017 and 2018, it dropped almost 4 to 5% down to around 7.5% growth. So there's a sharp decline in TRT growth that we're seeing. And so I just want you to keep that in mind. But I also, want you to keep in mind that if the Park Service does institute a reservation system, I think we realize that there's going to be 2 or 3 years of drops in visitation before it normalizes again. So just want you to keep these things in mind, that we are seeing a sharp trend downward in tourism-related revenue.
That was percent growth. So,
yeah, I mean, it's still growing, but
right,
we
so
dropped.
Overall collection, it's still growing. It's just went from double-digit growth to single-digit growth.
So it went from about almost 12% down to about 7.6%.
Still growing.
Any other discussion? We have a motion on the table. Motion was made by Rory Paxman, seconded by Curtis Wells. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails. There was those in favor: Paxman, Wells, and Halliday. Those opposed: Hawks, McGann, Morris, and Clapper. Thanks for all your work on this, Elaine, and we'll see how it goes. And good luck out at the trade show there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Next up is item J, approving proposed lease agreement with Emergency Medical Services Special Service District for use of the Civic Center and adjacent parking shed located at 540 and 580 East 100 North, aka Old Senior Center. Christina Salone.
We have made some progress, but we are not ready, and Andy then is going out of town, and I'm going out of town, so I'd like you guys to just postpone it indefinitely, and Andy knows he's responsible at the point we think it's final to bring it back to you guys.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Curtis as well, second by Terry Morse. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Paxman has stepped out of the room. Next up, approving proposed letter to Sitla regarding Love's Truck Stop and proposed bypass. This came from my brain, and but once it kind of got shared around, got some feedback, and I hadn't considered possible ramifications to the bypass project itself, and so it could muddy the waters, and I don't necessarily feel strongly, and I don't want to mess that up. So I would entertain a motion to, I don't know what it'd be, remove it from the agenda.
Just don't have a debate, do a motion.
Okay, so
Phil for a motion.
Say I entertain a motion, and if nobody makes a motion, it dies.
any motion? No motion. Moving right along. Next up.
Discussion?
Oh, please.
I mean, I don't know. I like the idea of putting our 2 cents in on what our thoughts are on the Love gas station. I'm wondering if we want to send a letter expressing if we, to see if the council does have concerns about it being placed in the middle of the residential area.
Sure. I think
making it more direct rather than an indirect.
I think reframing something and weighing in with those stakeholders would probably be good, but not necessarily pin it to any kind of bypass project or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Another thing too is at next week's joint meeting with San Juan County, we'll have representatives from Sitla in attendance, so that would be a good opportunity to.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Do you know if there's going to be anybody from Love's in attendance?
I don't.
It might be beneficial before that meeting. We have a little bit of at least a straw poll of kind of where we're at with it, just because obviously it seems like Sitla and San Juan are in support of the project, and so I wouldn't want to just like...
except northern San Juan.
Oh, sorry.
is not in support of it.
Right.
So straw poll to see who would like.
Well, I mean, if we wanted to kind of draft some kind of opinion or statement between now and then of kind of what, we could maybe, I don't know.
I have a question. There's a truck stop in Wellington. I don't know if any of you have stopped there for gas. They've got a.
It's hard not to.
Yeah. Or not, right? Anyway, there's a section for cars, and then there's a section for the big trucks around the back. It's not that big of an area. So I'm just curious about how big. I mean, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's a couple acres bigger or something, and from what I've seen in these other truck stops, they're not that big. So
And just the lineup.
yeah,
There's
I've
a
seen
Lowe's
that
truck
one.
stop there. I'm sure it's gonna be about.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
that big either.
I think the issue is more the necessary lighting and then the idling. Those guys that are in there sleeping in their rigs overnight tend to leave the diesel idling, and so I don't think it's necessarily the footprint of the place as much as other issues. But I digress.
Well, not really, but one thing that I think about a little bit when I think about that particular development is that I think that horse may be down the road with Sitla. And I think our time and energies would be better spent sitting down with Sitla and trying to reach some understanding of what we would like to see in Grand County and get them to buy into what we're trying to accomplish here, so that this sort of thing doesn't rear its ugly head again. And I think 5 years ago we may have dropped the ball on this. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it, and I do think that well, I just question what the best way to approach the problem is, whether or not it's to raise a stink about something that's probably a fait accompli, or to take a different approach and face them head on and try and preempt them taking advantage of other parcels in Grand County or the south part of the valley.
All right.
I've spoken to people who are on top of this quite a bit, and Sitla wants to just, make the money, but from my understanding, Love's Truck, the company itself hasn't completely signed off on it. So I think if we want to, as a group, if we oppose a Love's Truck stop at that point, it might be more beneficial to write the company itself rather than Sitla, because Sitla's, I think we might have more sway in that direction.
Isn't there a little old truck stop kind of for sale right there at the LaSalle Junction? A little turn off there.
Yeah.
Great place. That'd be a lot shorter commute for those guys trying to go to work. Jalen?
Well, to be fair to Sitla, their mission is to make money. That's their main motivating driving force, to make money for the public school systems and higher education. So it's kind of in their mission.
Yeah, but to be fair to the public school systems and education, my question is whether or not they're doing what's mandated.
This is a whole new
The
subject.
plot thickens. Dun, dun, dun.
And I agree with Mary wholeheartedly. It's my understanding that the president of Love's hasn't signed off on that.
So I don't know if we want to, as a,
Maybe we should reframe something more in that direction then.
Yeah, I mean, and if so, immediately.
yes.
Okay. Thanks for volunteering.
Question for you all. What specifically, what are the concerns? So Evan, you mentioned light pollution and noise disturbance.
And air quality.
Okay.
Right
And
there.
then I think there's we've seen some citizen letters that mentioned kind of crime and safety things from the transient nature of, overnight kind of pass through business there. And I'm trying to remember if there's any other points on.
Well, what I was gonna, yeah, and I mean that, that's on planning too, but also, I mean, anytime it's hard to foresee these kinds of things, but it's a piece of state land on, a highway corridor, and typically what we need to do is offer a buffer for those things, but how that, played out, I can't comment on. A suggestion I have is, I think a letter to Mr. Torgerson or Loves inquiring about these specific issues that we have, and their willingness or interest in providing some mitigation would be worthwhile, because if they do decide to charge on forward, it would be good to provide those concerns up front, as so that they have the opportunity to account for those when they build this thing. And then but as far as like how far along the deal is with Loves, I don't know personally. I don't have a comment to that. But that also, the kind of visioning and collaborative discussions that Terry's alluding to, I think would be a positive thing. There are an awful lot of semi-trucks that use Highway 191 for various reasons, and the volume is trending up. And this is one of those things that it's kind of become more of an issue for us, because it does lead to a lot of noise downtown, and issues for us downtown. And I've always found it kind of odd that we haven't had like a proper truck stop in the community, just because the demand is so high. But at the same time, I don't think anybody really looks forward to neighboring, with a truck stop. And when you see these big truck stops, like Rory mentions in Salina, they're Grand Junction, they're in commercial areas. And,
Far away from residential.
And this is what, makes this difficult. So I think, my opinion would be a letter, or to invite Mr. Torgerson in. Well, again, we've got that joint meeting, next week, where we'll have similar folks, but certainly understand the concerns from some citizens. I will say, though, that I have heard from many citizens. I don't know that what the tally is on northern San Juan County citizens. I wouldn't feel comfortable with the idea that all of them are opposed, because I've heard from quite a few that look forward to having the opportunity, to go grab a quick gallon of milk or something like that, closer to their residence, as opposed to, driving into downtown or what's currently offered out there. So I think there are some citizens that are looking forward to having those amenities out there. So that's all I have to say.
Great. Any further discussion? Moving right along, item L, adopting did we need to wrap something up there with letters or
Oh.
Yeah, what were you going to ask?
Well, that and to declare that it died per letter of motion. I don't know if you did that or not, but.
I don't think I declared that any action died. That's the time of death was.
She gone.
I think it is. I like the kind of broader visioning idea, but I think that there could be like a deliverable of a letter in a timely manner. And
I would like to send a letter to Loves.
Great.
Myself.
Awesome. Thanks for taking that on. I look forward to reviewing that. Next up, item L, adopting proposed ordinance approving amendments to the High Density Housing Overlay, HDHO, ordinance to clarify standards and procedures and to correct a presumed mapping error in the adopted map. Zachariah's name's next to this one.
Okay, so the May 21st County Council meeting, we held a public hearing to review proposed amendments to the recently adopted HDHO ordinance, the Code Standards and Procedures. During that public hearing, we also addressed proposed changes to the adopted map. So I don't want to go through all of what we discussed at that meeting, but what I would recommend is that maybe we parse out these issues. So we deal with the textual amendments first and the sort of mapping amendments second, or whatever order you would prefer, so that we don't get ourselves crossed on what we're talking about and what the issues are. So what would you like to discuss first? And I know the county attorney and I have had several follow-up conversations either between the last public hearing and today, and so we'll talk about those as well. So I think
I'd like to opine off the top that I recommend that we postpone this to the next meeting. So I don't know that we need to do this today. So it's up to you guys if you want to talk through it. But
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why. We're making moves here. We're getting stuff done.
Moves.
Lawyers are slowing us down.
It's true, but for good cause, for good reason. We envisioned this development agreement that's written into the ordinance. It was written into the original one, but we've cleaned it up a little bit to act as a master plan in a lot of sense. It is a master planning document that can control how the property in perpetuity is built out. It has caused a lot of confusion for folks that it's called a development agreement and not a master plan. So I'm recommending that we clean up this one last little detail. It's not a huge deal. It's not going to look a lot different than what you have, but I haven't had a chance to get in it yet since I attended the last planning commission meeting. It was very eye-opening for me to see how the planning commission was struggling with the way we have set it up.
Can I just add a few additional comments to that? So part of this is coming down to the sort of legislative versus administrative components of the approval. And we, in our last sort of big round of revisions following the actual adoption of the ordinance, did a lot of work to clarify this sort of two-step process, but what the planning commission is getting tripped up on is that in this first step where there's a legislative approval applying the overlay to a specific parcel, they're wanting a lot of site planning elements that frankly are not part of a typical legislative approval. And so I think that's the work that Christina and I are hoping to clarify even further. And when we were talking a lot about the benefits of going this overlay route, I think both the planning commission and several of you were really enthused by the level of certainty that you would get in terms of site planning control. And so, we just want to make sure that we honor that legislative intent and continue to just clarify the process for developers and for the planning commission, because those of us in the development office, we're sort of very attuned to the nuances, but not everyone is spending hours upon hours a day working through this stuff. So.
And we want to make it more similar to the master planning process in the PUD process that people are familiar with. It's a word they get, but development agreement, they're tripping up on.
Now that said, I do think that you could probably take action on the mapping component tonight, because that is not something that we do need additional.
Well, the ordinance isn't set up to parse
The
them out.
map is, we haven't adopted ordinance, we haven't adopted map. I personally think you could take action on a mapping amendment, because even additional revisions to the text of the code are not going to affect.
We haven't drafted the ordinance that way is my problem with that. So you don't have before you a proposed amendment that would take action on just the mapping.
Although, not to sort of beat a dead horse on this particular matter, but couldn't the ordinance as drafted just simply remove the textual amendment components and only address the mapping?
No, because it repeals and replaces.
So just to back up a step, if I was to come into the office tomorrow and I was ready to build housing, and I was requesting the HDHO, what would I be told?
Well, we have an ordinance in place and a map in place, and we would basically process applications and work with applicants to sort of review them in accordance with the direction that we're moving with these proposed changes. And so the developers that have shown early interest in the overlay have been, frankly, quite open to working with us and being understanding that this is a pretty significant code amendment and land use sort of development process for the county, and they're excited about the opportunities and they understand sort of this unfolding nature of it, and so we would work with applicants to sort of move along this this course even ahead of the code amendments, because in effect the way that the current code is written still sort of supports this. It's just not clear enough explicitly.
And on
Does
that,
that make sense?
Is anyone actually receiving the overlay?
Well, we have one application that was supposed to have a public hearing tonight. It was postponed due to some missing items from their application. We've got another overlay public hearing for a different parcel scheduled for the next planning commission meeting. So we definitely have, several in the pipeline, and we will be seeing several in the very near future. I mean, I guess to give you a sense of where I think we're at, we'll probably reach that 300 unit cap, well before the end of the year. So people
So
are taking advantage of it.
yeah, we are processing them under the existing ordinance. So this isn't slowing down applications or processing.
So you recommend, Christina, that we just postpone it until
I
next?
do. Mm-hmm.
It was already a motion, right, wasn't it?
Yeah, you guys completely violated Robert's rules of time.
Yeah, that's right. Good catch. We need
But it is on the table.
All right.
Motion made by Curtis Wells, seconded by Rory Paxman
to postpone.
to postpone. Any further discussion? Now we have the discussion because they okay.
We needed a second, we didn't have it.
Terry?
I have just one thing that I can't contain myself. Paragraph 4.7.6, item B, prior to and prior to. I just wanted to point that out while I had it in my head.
Okay.
You're on 4.7.6, okay, paragraph B. Right. Sorry about that.
It just was bothering you.
I just want to prove I read it.
With the discussion, I would ask for a straw poll of where people are at with the mapping question.
Doing it now or waiting?
No, well, I don't want to upset the attorney and muddy the waters because I appreciate getting this right the first time. But if there's strong opinions on the mapping question, maybe it's worth kind of putting that on their radar that it would need to be refined so that we're not postponing yet again in the future.
Okay, I'm raising my hand in support of correcting the mapping error.
To include the flag lot?
Yes.
Well, not necessarily tonight, but, we have a lot of people coming to weigh in, and not tonight. Not tonight. It's not happening tonight. I mean, we do what we want. Okay, so there was.
You asked for my straw.
Yep,
That's my straw.
There was a straw for
getting it right.
Including the flag lot when the time comes. Is there other head nods in that direction, or?
Well, I'll be frank with you. The way it was worded on the agenda is that they were the same item. They were both included in one motion, and I had not planned on voting for the high-density housing overlay. I didn't vote for it the first time for a lot of reasons that I won't go over again. So I was just going to vote no anyway, and since they were both in the same motion, I didn't really I did read through the stuff, but I didn't think and study about it. So I'm not prepared to do a straw poll with myself tonight.
Thanks, Frank.
I'm not willing to do a straw poll either, because in deference to our county legal advice.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
We should do it all at once.
So motion to postpone is on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously.
Good, that was painful.
Next up, item M, adopting proposed resolution approving final plat for Riley's Roost subdivision located at 4511 East Sunny Acres Lane.
Okay, so we've got a 3-lot subdivision here, 5 acres being subdivided into 3 lots. It's basically at the county boundary. So the county boundary is obviously right there on Sunny Acres Lane. So this property is owned by the Rileys, and the reason why we are going through the full subdivision process rather than just the minor record survey is because this property was recently subdivided through a minor record survey, and that process is only it can only be used once after a minor record survey is occurred, and the parcels in order to be eligible for further subdivision need to go through the full preliminary plat and final plat process. The preliminary plat was approved by the Planning Commission. It has been approved by all of Grand County's development review team members and utility service providers. It meets all of the specs of the Grand County Code. We'll note that while water will be provided by Grand Water and Sewer Service Agency, the sewer will actually be provided by San Juan County. So the subdividers will have to go through San Juan County to get their sewer services hooked up. So they'll be paying sewer impact fees and going through the sewer connection process with San Juan County, but otherwise the applicant has met all of the county standards. They will be providing meaningful stormwater retention improvements to manage stormwater runoff, and although the 2 of the 3 lots will not be built upon immediately, when those lots are built upon, they will need to get encroachment permits from the road department. So that will determine the exact locations of the driveways for those lots. They all have frontage on Sunny Acres.
Jerry.
I move to adopt the proposed resolution approving the final plat for Riley's Roost subdivision located at 4511 East Sunny Acres Lane and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Motion made by Terry Morse, seconded by Mary McGann. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Jay Lynn.
It's really silly, and I haven't found it yet, but I did notice that throughout the document, the name was spelled one way, and then at one point, it changed like to Reilley. I don't think it was a county document, but just it's kind of weird to see.
You mean in
that.
one of their documents?
I think I haven't gotten to it yet. It's such a
Be in the CC&Rs.
long agenda thing. No, that's not it either. But anyway, yeah. No, it's not in those either. Huh.
Oh, yeah.
I did highlight it at some point, but I haven't found it yet.
Yeah, I do see some instances of Joe Riley spelled Reilly. That's on their document.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So do we need the correct spelling?
No.
I don't think we have any control over it.
No, I mean, it's spelled correctly on our documents, right? Okay.
Reilly.
Search here. over here, I've got a comment.
Please.
You sent me the subdivision improvements agreement to review, which I haven't gotten to, but your agenda summary says attorney review in A, and the resolution does not include a contingency for my review. So I assume that is outstanding and needs to be integrated.
In the motion.
Yeah. Or in the resolution needs to be, well, no, I guess the motion, right?
Yeah. I would entertain a substitute motion.
Contingent upon final.
Or amendment?
Yes. Or,
I will be willing to amend my motion to incorporate what legal counsel has just said.
is that clear enough? State it again.
I know,
Okay.
I just don't know exactly how she worded
So
it.
somebody can make a motion to amend, which would then have to be
Oh,
approved,
okay.
and then you'd have to vote again. So
Okay.
it's better to just do a substitute motion.
That's,
I'll make a substitute
Please.
motion.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. So just add to the motion that,
pending legal review.
Of the subdivision
I move
improvements
to
agreement.
adopt the proposed ordinance approving amendments to the, no, I'm on the wrong one. Okay. Move to adopt the proposed resolution approving the final plat for Riley's Roof subdivision located at 4511 East Sunny Acre Lane and pending legal review, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
I'll second it.
You like it? You like it? Everybody likes it. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Mr. Wells is out of the room. Thanks for that. Next up,
I'll make a motion to postpone item N indefinitely until I get the letter from the person who is supposed to be getting me the letter. So let's just make it indefinite until I get it. So I move to postpone item N indefinitely.
motion made by Mary McGann to postpone item N, approving use of Grand County logo as a cooperating agency with Mill Creek Collaborative Group, which was postponed from May 21st, 2019.
Do it indefinitely.
Postponed indefinitely. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Terry Morse. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, discussion items. Item O, calendar and public notice. Briney Hill. Can we all get theme music like professional wrestling? When somebody gets called in, you get like... Okay.
Alright, for June calendars, so as was already announced, June 5th is tomorrow, the open house at 4 p.m. at the Grand Center. And then also June 13th and 17th. June 10th, 10 a.m. is the joint meeting with San Juan, the Pavilion. June 14th and June 21st are the next change of government study committee meetings, and those are in noon here in the chambers. June 25th is not on your calendar, 5 to 7 p.m. at the Grand Center is open house regarding draft comprehensive management plan and master plan for Colorado and Green Rivers.
Could you expand on that a little more?
I don't have the email.
Okay.
I can forward it to everyone.
That was the one
Didn't
from
we-
Tony?
Tony.
Yeah.
Okay. Mancuso, which also needs a great theme music when he comes in. Mancuso. Sorry, I digress.
And June 27th, Canyon Country Partnership, 9 a.m. Orangeville Community Center. Any updates for June?
We have a lack of a quorum for the Solid Waste District Board meeting on the 13th. Wait, is that the 6th? It's supposed to be on the 13th. Oh, I'm lost.
I've got an edit as well.
Anyway, it's on the 20th. The Solid Waste Special Service District Number 1's meeting is going to be at 4 o'clock on the 20th. instead of the 13th. Not even on the 13th. Tuesdays.
The library board will be meeting on the 25th this month, which you have down there, but the meeting on the 13th is not happening.
Alright, for July 4th is Independence Day, so the offices will be closed. July 12th through the 15th is NACO annual conference, and that's in Clark County.
Is anybody planning on going to that?
Update. The BLM meeting on the travel management plan, we've completed all our work, so we won't be doing those anymore.
So, yeah, I mean, you got my email about the AOG, and I'm pretty sure they're not meeting in June, and in July, they're meeting on the 11th, although it's a video conferencing meeting. So.
I got it, I just haven't had a chance. And July 24th, Pioneer Day, county offices will be closed. Employment opportunities, corrections officer, patrol deputy, communications dispatch, and food services assistant manager all closed on May 31st. Road department labor closes June 7th. Border district, volunteer vacancy. Budget advisory board, historical preservation commission, housing authority, noxious weed control board, Arches Special Service District, Canyonlands, healthcare special service district, and transportation special service district. And special events, June 1st, which already passed, Roman Louise, and no events in July.
Thanks, Brian.
Next up, item P, discussion and update on overnight rental moratorium and decision-making process so that definitive decisions can be made. Councilmember Morse.
Yes, I'm not sure how much time the council wants to spend on this. You can probably spend as much as you want. This was really actually came out of an effort on my part to clarify for myself what I thought was really the direction that my mind was taking me on actually making decisions and making them in a logical order that would lead to where I felt I was at the time on the whole subject of the moratorium. And so I guess what I would like to find out from our county attorney is if she's willing to talk a little bit about non-conforming use versus overlay, is that seemed to be one of the questions that the various folks that I've talked to in the Planning Commission and the council are a little confused of, although I think some of that has cleared up. But anyway, I'm just, if you'd like to comment on what I've sent in my thinking process, I'd be happy to hear it. And if not, that's very fine too.
But so that's decision 3 that we're talking about.
That would be yes. That would be in decision 3.
So decision 1 was yes, right? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Decision 2. Do we want to protect the vested rights of currently developed properties and currently vested properties? That was yes.
That
also.
was, that's a yes for me.
Okay, I just don't want to be like 3 months from here and people would be like, oh, let's go back to decision one.
Yeah, no.
So, okay, so we've done one, we've done two, those are yeses, no surprises. All right, which brings us to this question of, do we do this by overlay zones or by designating them as non-conforming uses?
Well, there are legal issues to discuss and there are practical issues to discuss. And the legal issues, I will want to go into closed session, so I don't want to talk about those for the first time here. I will say from a practical standpoint, I am opposed to removing overnight accommodations as a use by right and only grandfathering in. I do promote and support the overlay concept or creating a new base zone idea, because that's another third option, right? It's slightly different from the overlay, and Zachariah should really talk you through those two choices. But as between overlay / base zone and grandfathering in as non-conforming uses, then yes, I absolutely support the overlay base zone concept. From a practical standpoint, from an enforcement administrative issue, it's very difficult to enforce non-conforming uses. It becomes a title issue every single time you sell a piece of property. It creates instability in real estate markets, and there are legal issues. So, I don't like it.
To weigh in on this direction of going with overlays and what were we calling it?
The base.
The base zone.
So, I've talked to several of you about this individually. I've talked to an attorney about it as well. I'm of the same opinion that it is unwise for a variety of reasons for us to pursue making any existing invested projects into uses in this context and at this scale, because we're talking about a tremendous number of properties. One of those being political and ethical, in addition to the legal concerns that the county attorney would want to talk to you about in closed session, and then also just in terms of good planning practice. You don't want to end up with hundreds of legal non-conforming uses if there's a better way to address these existing invested projects. So I am of the opinion that we go with the route of establishing certainty for these existing invested projects. And so in comparing the overlay approach, which is what we are going to go forward with in the public hearing with the Planning Commission on June 11th, versus establishing new base zone districts, I would certainly opt for the overlay. And the reason is this. So an overlay is as simple as saying we're not doing anything about the base zone districts. We're just putting this overlay on top of it, which gives a parcel, additional development rights subject to the standards that are in that overlay. So the difference if you go with, creating new base zone districts is that in addition to the accommodations use, you're going to have to determine all of the other uses that are permitted or prohibited or conditionally permitted in those base zone districts. And that's just a huge exercise, right? Because, when we're only talking about this one special use, the use of overnight accommodations, you don't have to address all the other uses like residential or, garage, or, gas stations or manufacturing facilities or retail, like the whole plethora of all other land uses. You don't have to address those. You just need to say these parcels are eligible, and not even just eligible, but given the right to continue operating as overnight accommodations.
And that would just be a parcel by parcel application.
Yeah, and then you also don't have to worry about, spot zoning doesn't show up in state code. It's a planning principle. It's no longer something that's considered legal or illegal. There's some case law on that sort of predates the change to LEDMA in state code. But you just don't even have to get into that conversation when you're talking about overlays rather than zoning designations.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So are we talking about, is the council talking about scrapping the existing overnight accommodations overlay zone and replacing that with a new one, or just using the existing one as the vehicle and expanding that?
Great question. So what we are going forward with the Planning Commission on June 11th in their public hearing is actually repealing and replacing the existing overlay with 3 new overlays that are use specific. So the reason we decided to go that route is that the way the current overlay is written is that it's really only appropriate for like condos and townhomes. It's not an appropriate, the way the text is written, it doesn't really apply to hotels, motels, or campgrounds. And so what we have done is create 3 maps, basically, that you can look at all together or individually. So there'll be an overnight accommodations overlay for hotels and motels, an overnight accommodations overlay for campgrounds, and an overnight accommodations overlay for these like residential units that are used for night rentals, so the condos and townhomes.
Another question, and this is maybe for Terry. So you sent out a memo, Terry, just when you got back into the country and kind of outlining your thoughts. And so, you know, arriving at moving through decision 1, 2, and 3, then you move on to decision 4, which is locate and ratify the zoning overlay specific zones on a zoning map, concurrent with the definition of the permitted uses. So we just discussed that. And then you go on to say, once this is accomplished and ratified, then decision 5. Decision 5 is, you know, basically the subsections of the content in the overlay, I would assume. So you've got A, approval procedures, B, permitted use, C, site master plan required, D, development standards, and then D has part 1 through 6 of all these different requirements. So is it your intent, and is the Planning Commission working on those with Landmark, or what's the timeline associated with that part?
Well,
I can respond to that as well.
yeah, go ahead.
So we do have some draft language for development and redevelopment standards that would be part of an overlay. It is my understanding that there is not an appetite for attaching an overlay to parcels that are either undeveloped or not currently being used for overnight accommodations. And so we've got these standards that we will continue to work on. I don't think they're going to be ready for prime time in the moratorium time frame, or window of opportunity. So we will continue to work on those. We do need to get some standards in place for redevelopment. I don't think that we have any redevelopment that's imminent, meaning like we're going to attach this overlay to all these existing invested projects right out of the gate to establish this certainty. I don't anticipate that any of these parcels are going to come in and say, we want to add on 50 rooms or convert a campground to a hotel. But the Planning Commission has established some core principles that they want to insert into these different use-specific overlays. For instance, they want to explicitly state that campgrounds can't convert to hotels due to the visual impacts that results in. And I think that is actually achieved by default, because you're going to attach the OA campground overlay to the campground and not an OA hotel motel. So that just by default they wouldn't be allowed to do that, but they want to spell that out explicitly. So we've got these standards, and we will present them on June 11th in the public hearing. But I can't tell you with certainty that they're going to be ready for your public hearing on July 2nd. We do have a public meeting or discussion item on June 18th, where we will present to you the sort of results of the June 11th public hearing, and to give you advanced notice and advanced awareness of what you can expect to see in your public hearing on July 2nd. So I'll have more information then on the degree of progress we've made on these standards. But my opinion is that they need a lot more fleshing out.
And along with that, it's been my intention to attempt to, in this process where it happens in prime time or shortly thereafter, to look down the road a number of years and see if we can't identify what other potential spots that we could apply these overlays to in anticipation of where any future development may be appropriate, should we decide that is appropriate, and get it done at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that we haven't talked at length about in this process, but I was sort of thinking about this. Well, obviously, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last several months. But once these use-specific overlays are in place, one approach could be, well, let's identify those areas somewhere down the road where we think lodging could be appropriate. Right now, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of appetite for that, but that is one approach, is you say, okay, so these parcels aren't currently being used for lodging, they're undeveloped, and so let's draw a boundary around them and say these are the parcels that are eligible. Come ask us for the right to develop lodging under one of these use-specific overlays. But the other approach is to say, well, now that we've got these overlays, anybody can come ask us to apply them to any parcel, and then you've got the standards in place already, right? Once we get these development standards fully fleshed out. So, we were spending a lot of time trying to think like, oh, where are these undeveloped parcels or parcels that aren't currently being used for lodging that might be appropriate, and, in some ways maybe that wasn't that necessary because you can apply it on a parcel-specific basis, right?
So
that's something, again, that we just need to continue working through, and that's why, I take your suggestion to heart that, we accomplish what we can in this period of time. I think we've made a lot of meaningful progress in terms of understanding public sentiment and getting a really good handle on the issue, and we've, done a lot of research and sort of identified a lot of information about this that we didn't have before, and so, we're miles ahead of where we were, 4 months ago in terms of understanding the planning around this. And I think we can hang our hat on making a lot of progress, but there's still more to be made, and that's why I say the plan doesn't end on August 2nd.
So, Zachary, if I understand you right, if we have the overlay, then if a landowner, say down by Love's truck stop, decides he wants to come in and say, well, that's in San Juan County, but you get my point, wants to come in and apply for overnight accommodations use, he can say, will you apply the overlay to this parcel? Yeah. And then the county council has the latest legislative power to say yes or no.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of that approach is instead of like drawing a boundary around parcels that would be eligible to make that request, is that you don't set an expectation for those parcels within the eligibility boundary that if they come and ask you, they can likely expect a yes, right? And that was one of the concerns that I had in terms of drawing this boundary, is like, if there isn't an appetite to say yes to a request, don't set that expectation.
We'd also, and then it takes the speculation out of it too.
Right.
So if someone is interested and we find that it's appropriate, we have the ability to expand the boundary to include the parcel.
Yeah, and I mean, even though we haven't had requests to apply our existing OA to additional parcels, like, people could have been coming to the county asking for that.
It was news to me, so it's probably news to a lot of the public.
Yeah, it's possible.
So, with the current overlay, if we're gonna repeal and replace it, the buildings that are currently within those boundaries, do they?
Covered.
But even if they don't have a business license now or whatever?
Yeah, that's the approach we're going to take.
Okay.
And I acknowledge that there is some debate, and certainly having a more intense debate about it within city limits, but my recommendation of the Planning Commission, and then there's some debate on our Planning Commission about it, certainly. But my recommendation has always been, just cover the entire development. It's just simpler, it's easier. I think the scale of the, quote-unquote loss of potential long-term units is so small relative to, the scale of the larger issue. And, honestly, there are some people that live in, Rim Village, Red Cliffs, some of these might be rental developments, but I don't see it being like the most desirable place to live.
But if they want to live there for the next 20 years and then sell it as, you could rent here, then, okay.
I think that's the right thing to do.
Doing it better than the city.
Duh. Great. Does that feel like a good kind of bring up to speed of where we're at in the decision-making process and kind of as you had it outlined and for moving forward to the public hearing on the 11th and all that? Jalen?
A couple of questions.
Yeah.
Question and a comment. So clarify for me, we're talking about very limited overlays, parcel by parcel. We're not talking about
Existing
blanketing.
investment projects at this stage.
Okay. And then my comment is, I think many people do, have this vision that we will take the next year or so, whatever it takes, to create a vision for our county and what we really want it to look like, which will include probably maybe new zones. I don't know how it will look, but I guess a concern of mine, not being a planning professional, I don't know how this works, but if we have, we've got a variety of overlays on the books right now. Does that complicate things down the road for people who are planning to say, oh, well, this already has this, this, and this overlay, but we want to do this? That's one of my concerns.
I don't think we have that many overlays. And, I don't know how much time you spent looking at other jurisdictions' zoning maps, but ours is relatively simple.
Okay.
So, if that answers your question, I don't have any grand concerns that we're making it more confusing in terms of land use development potential. I realize that there has been confusion throughout this process about use rights and how things are all shaking out. That's pretty common, as, frankly, there's a lot of mutual learning happening rapidly in a process like this. And so I acknowledge that it can be challenging for folks to kind of track it. We've done our best to keep clarifying the process for folks every step of the way. You don't get full understanding across the board by any means, but we've done a lot to try to keep the process clear, and the way that we've outlined it here in this meeting and in Terry's memo, I think hopefully simplifies this whole conversation for folks. And I do agree that again, the planning continues after this ends. I might need another staff person to keep this rate of work production going. But yeah, I see a lot of opportunity for some longer term visioning. Again, with the city as well. My personal vision is that at some point, somewhere in the near to medium term future, we have one general plan, one land use code, one development review office, so we can keep it simple for our development community and for our residents and create efficiencies in that regard. So, for whatever that's worth, for me, that's sort of a important process we continue working towards.
And are the current overlays applied anywhere outside the valley?
Just to existing vested projects.
So there's no existing in Cisco or Thompson or
in Thompson, there is a campground.
You're right.
Not currently, but
right.
But the proposal is to attach the campground overlay to those projects.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, all this is subject for you to change when it comes across your eyes.
So, I don't know. I I
Our
don't
goal
know
is
if
to be more active during the process, so we're not starting over.
So, Evan,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm being overly simplistic, but does everyone understand the difference between non-conforming use and use by right? Yeah, I mean, there's two main differences. One is that non-conforming uses can't expand, and they can't cease to operate for longer than 6 months. And so that's the big, I guess, you could say liability. I think that you also have to realize that the rights of non-conforming uses are under your control. They're a component of the land use code. And so you could provide more rights if you wanted. But the way that they're drafted right now, they're intended really to sort of soften the blow or eliminate legal liability, civil liability on uses that you want to go away. And so if you want something to go away eventually, that's kind of how you do it without incurring civil liability.
Yeah, and I guess my sense of the matter has been that while there are certainly some community members who would like to see existing vested uses go away, I didn't ever get that was your intention in enacting the moratorium. That is definitely the mechanism to get rid of uses that you don't want anymore, is you amortize them out and you ensure that the property owner is able to recoup their economic investment and the right that you're taking away. But I never derived that intention from you.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be my intention.
Yeah.
No, and it's an easy enough thing to think about a hotel, even a campground, as one unit as ceasing use. But when we're talking about Rim Village and these other condo projects, and we have a number of those in the county, that is sort of, it's a very difficult administrative and enforcement issue into the future to be effective.
I feel good with where things are going. Yeah.
But I think it's also important to kind of point out that anybody, as far as I know, can apply for a rezone for any zoning that we have at any time. And so I think you have to realize that there is no capacity that I'm aware of to establish eligibility for rezoning applications. You always have the discretion whether you vote them up or down, though. So when we're talking about the planning for future rezoning, we're talking about guidance documents in the future land use plan, I'm assuming. And so, it's always subject to discretion of the property owner to make application and the council to approve, regardless of what you come up with.
So not to get too circular, but to translate what Chris is saying is, we go down this path. Let's say there's a property that doesn't have the overlay attached to it. They come to you and they ask for the overlay to be attached. You have the legislative discretion to say yes or no. And what Chris is saying is, right now, going forward, you would want to base your legislative discretion on some sort of guiding principles. And so that's some of the follow-up work that we have to do. Because, when you have to face the public, if you were to say yes, they would be saying, well, what support, do you have to be saying yes to this overlay request? So.
That's a no, but you also have broad legislative decision-making power with any zoning request. So you need to articulate decisions on the record. And of course, standards are a good idea. I'm always going to support standards, but,
You don't always have to follow them.
You can do what you want when it comes to rezone.
So I think everybody seems pretty well informed on the issue at this point. Do you guys feel like you've got clarity now?
I think this is the most descriptive and articulate discussion that the council's had on the issue that I've been involved in. When we're all in agreement, it's very crystal clear how the county is proceeding and towards what.
Yes. Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All the thank yous. Any public hearing? No need for a public hearing. Any need for a closed session? Booyah! That is our whole agenda. I would like to adjourn this meeting of the Grand County Council at 6:48.
That's revolutionary.
Good job, guys. Every meeting you set a new record. It's ridiculous.
I had to make up for the last.